Welcome to Sustainable Stock, Reviving Legacy Genetics, the podcast that delves into the power of traditional cattle genetics and the ranchers bringing them back. We're returning to the tried and true practices that prioritize what truly works on the ranch. Each episode, we'll talk to ranchers who are rediscovering the methods that built strong, resilient, efficient, and fertile herds in the 1960s and 70s. These breeders are blending the best of the past with practical solutions for today's ranching world. Whether you're passionate about the future of ranching or curious about heritage genetics, this podcast is for you. Presented by Boss Sires. Tune in as we reconnect with the roots of the herd. Here's your host, Patrick Powers.
Welcome back to Sustainable Stock. Today's episode takes us to the Philippines, where a young cattleman, Bogs Peralta, is challenging the status quo. While many are chasing imported genetics and feed-based systems, Bogs is betting on something different: fertility, function, and forage. We'll talk about his journey into regenerative grazing, why he believes the solution starts with the cow herself, and how Boss Sires genetics might be offering hope in a region long plagued by food insecurity and reproductive inefficiency. This conversation is a reminder that fixing fertility might be the most revolutionary thing a cattleman can do. Mr. Boggs, are you with me?
Oh, I'm here. I'm here, Patrick. Morning.
Good morning to you. Good evening to me.
Yeah. Good evening to you. Yeah, that's right. We're 13 hours apart.
Just a little separation there, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I probably did a pretty poor job of introducing you. I find that tends to be a habit of mine. So I would love to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to the listeners.
Oh, I think you did a good job, but okay, all right. I'll give them a little introduction. Well, where do I start? Well, I've been raising cattle for about 10 years now. Started with I had my great grandpa had some cows, and then passed it on to my grandpa, then my dad, and then it's changed over the years. Because back then my grandpa had 200 cows. We have about 100 now, but the difference is he had a bigger area to graze on back in the day. Because here in the Philippines, like most Asian countries, we're into planting rice. So when it rains, what my grandfather used to do is he would bring his cows to the higher areas of the town where you can't plant rice, and by the time that everyone would harvest rice, he would bring back his cattle to graze on the residue. So now that I think the irrigation systems here are more developed, we no longer have access to the same amount of pasture, same amount of land, because you don't really need to own back then you don't really need to own the land to be able to graze other properties. There's sort of I think synergistic relationship between the rice farmer and the cattle farmer, because during the off season you could see that in a way the rice farmer would benefit from the cattle grazing their crops. But nowadays we're only limited to the area that we own, which is about 45 hectares. I think that's about 100 acres.
Okay.
So these cows that we have right now are, I think some of them descended from the old stocks that my grandfather had, but it's a lot different. Like when we started, because we didn't have that much access to pasture, we had to. I think we overstocked on our cows, so we had no choice but to hire some people to help us in gathering feed for our cattle.
Mm-hmm.
But it took us years for us to realize that, this wasn't working. This is just not profitable. So over time, we got to, we just kept on doing a lot of trial and error, like do something and then see if it works. If it fails, then we'll just try something new again. So over the years of not being able to make a profit from cattle, we realized that we were spending too much on labor, and so we tried to focus more on I was introduced to rotational grazing by a friend of mine, King Carlos, and he, well, aside from rotational grazing, he taught me about adapted genetics, how adapted genetics would benefit my operation. Because over the years, what I've been told is that the bigger the cow, the better.
Yeah.
So that's what I followed. I followed that trend that I believe is being followed also in the United States. So the problem we had back then was that even though we were able to cheapen our operation by implementing new grazing systems, we would have problems with dystocia, fertility. I didn't really realize that keeping big cows that would give you a calf every 18 months to 2 years was too costly, given the inefficiencies of our operation. And so that's where I started to experiment with different genetics, like genetics that are more, I would say, adapted to low input systems.
Yes, sir.
But the thing is, since we have limited access to genetics here in the Philippines, even if I've been introduced to different breeds like the Mashona, the Anguni, luckily we were able to meet an Australian rancher who has similar principles. His name is Alf Collins of CBV Brahmans. I believe Grant also got to meet him when Grant was here in the Philippines.
Okay.
He's really he's really serious about finding the marathon runners in his herd. What he says is that if cow doesn't give him a calf on a given year, given calving season, automatically they're out of the herd. But the thing is, it's the opposite trend here in the Philippines. If you love the cow so much, and then it looks good, it's big, there's a tendency for the owner to be attached to that cow and keep it in the herd and continue to replicate those genetics.
Well, Mr. Boggs, that's not just there in the Philippines. Unfortunately, a good portion of the cattle market falls victim to that. They're just so good. They look so good on paper that you give them a second chance and a third chance. And you got to let them get a little further out on what they owe you or what you expect of them just because they're such potential for profit when it does happen. That they get a little bit more lead rope on them, a little more lead, and then you realize your system's falling apart and everything's out that far.
And I actually thought that you could get away with the premium of selling bigger cattle here, but over time you realize that it's like the costs don't make up for the losses.
Yeah. Well, you have powerhouse through a lot of stuff for me. And I've already got some questions prepared just from our little 20-minute conversation we had the other day that I wanted to go through. So if you don't mind, I say we just start ticking away at them. So my biggest question is, what brought you into the concept of regenerative grazing systems? Was it a single point? Was it a brief of knowledge fell in your hands? Was it one individual? I know you mentioned a friend, but was there education material found its way to you that led you to this line of thinking?
Oh well, the thing is, my friend was already a couple of years ahead of me when it came to regenerative grazing and rearing adapted animals.
Okay.
The thing, so what he did was, he added me to some groups on Facebook that I didn't know existed, and he also gave me some reading materials. He shared to me an e-copy at the time of Man, Cattle, and Veld.
Yes,
And
sir.
eventually, I got a copy myself. I bought a copy on Amazon, and
Okay.
then aside from that, I also got into different courses. I subscribed to Jim Elizondo's Total Grazing course.
Yes, sir.
And I wouldn't say that we've perfected the system. I believe there's much for us to learn. But yeah, the thing is, by following these practices, I can't say we're there yet, but totally there yet. But there have been a lot of improvements. We've been able to cut down on our costs.
Okay. Well, I think the next question I have for you would be, you mentioned the breeding cycles there and what y'all have come to expect or allow. Could you go a little further on that? What percentage of the cattle population there in the Philippines would you say calves on 18 to 24 month intervals? Is that common?
Oh, I think, well, based on the what I've been exposed to, I would say it's very common. It's probably, I would say, in the 90s, 90% or more.
Really?
Yeah, because back in the day, we had my I get to talk to some older people in town that talk to me about the native cattle that we had here in the Philippines back in the day.
Yes, sir.
These were cattle that were very small, but you know what was good about them was that they were just so low input and would give you a calf every year.
And sustain on available forage.
Yes, without having to without being supplemented with any grain or whatever they had. All they had to do was just tie the cow and then just it would just thrive on its own on low inputs, even in drought.
Yes, sir. I have a further question in that regard. You spoke about the rising labor costs for y'all's operation that you inherited from your
Yeah,
grandfather. So,
yeah.
when you speak of labor, is that the ability to grow supplemental feed, or is y'all's import cost of grain? Because y'all don't have feed stores just down the road, right?
Oh yeah, we don't.
So, when you speak of labor, you're talking about the act of not only rearing the cattle but growing the supplemental feed for them as well.
The thing is, here we're not as advanced as the United States. Like we don't have the combines to be able to harvest big amounts of silage or hay. We don't have hay balers that could give us like a lot of hay. So we depend so much on people to gather these inputs for us.
Okay. Well, I needed that clarity there.
So it's very, very expensive. But since I think it's something that you don't realize because labor here in the Philippines is relatively cheaper,
Yes, sir.
but it's something that you get to feel in the long run.
Okay. Well, you've touched on the native cattle there and kind of the what people are saying they were capable of doing. Are they no longer present? You've talked about these other cattle you've come to look forward to, Mashona, and you're reaching out and looking for greater genetics. Could you not look inward for native cattle that are known to have been able to produce in that environment?
You know the Philippines, because the Philippines is an archipelago. It's a group of islands, scattered islands. So
Yes, sir.
I've seen some native cattle online, but most of them are from in far away islands. But here in the island of Luzon, the biggest island of the Philippines, most of the cattle that we have here are already heavily influenced by Brahman. More of the, I would say, the show type Brahman. So for me, I think there's sort of a mismatch because I think these show type Brahman are raised on much better inputs.
Yes, sir.
And the thing is, we don't have access to the same inputs for them to be able to produce at a high rate.
Yeah.
So if we have the chance, what our plan eventually is to be able to bring in some native cattle from other islands and hopefully have a fresh start in improving these genetics. Because I think the native cattle has a lot of potential, but we just didn't have the right principles of management to be able to select the best of the best that would give us a calf every year.
Yes, sir.
And I think one thing that's lacking in the cattle industry is that we never really, I don't think a lot of cattlemen here in the Philippines have thought of focusing on producing cattle on the basis of profit per hectare, in your case acre, right?
Yes, sir. Well, I don't think many cattlemen have considered that anywhere in the world, sir. That is, that's I wouldn't call it controversial. I can't think of the proper word for it at this moment, but it is definitely a new line of thinking for many anywhere within the world, especially here in the United States.
Yeah.
It's never, no one ever does the math at that level. It's always what you can get for the cow. It's never what they're producing per acre because I feel like the relationship with the land is divorced for a lot of cattlemen. They don't value that the cow's relationship with the land or their relationship with it as well. So why would you look at the ability to profit from it?
Yeah.
But that's of course my opinion. Well, I do have a question for you as well, Mr. Boggs. Y'all are obviously open to bringing in outside genetics, and you're actively trying to source them. You mentioned Mashona. Can you tell me what it is about the Mashona breed that attracted you in their direction?
Well, at first, since we've been used to producing cattle that are relatively large frame, it took a while for me to try to study and read about the breed because I didn't really think that there would be other Boss Taurus breeds that could outperform or live in low input systems that where our Boss Indicus cattle would thrive. So I think I also got to. This started with me being able to read content on in Man Cattle and Veld, where I got to see that the if we're talking about overall performance in terms of relative low cost per hectare, the Mashona would give you the best results. But of course, I believe that even if we introduce those genetics here in the Philippines, we're still going to have to select which ones are going to perform here because I believe that in a way the weather conditions in Zimbabwe are different from the weather conditions here in the Philippines.
Yes, sir.
So if we're going to be able to start with what we have, be able to select the best of the best cows, and then fuse these genetics, I think eventually we'll get somewhere. We'll be able to produce cattle that are more
Locally adapted.
locally adapted, earlier maturing. Because here in the Philippines, most cows calf at 3 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old.
Yeah.
So, so that's a
Well,
long time.
do you feel that's is that a shortcoming of the genetics that have been brought in, or do you feel like that's just the natural state of the world of cattle that is becoming more common?
I think partly yes. I think partly that's a problem of that the genetics aren't really meant to thrive here in the Philippines. But aside from that, I think we have a long way to go in terms of learning about proper management and selecting animals for fertility.
Yes, sir.
Because here we're more concerned about the size of the cow, the height of the cow. Even we're even more concerned about the size of the ears of the cow than than for the fertility. But it's something that a lot of middlemen came up with as a strategy to add value to the product.
Well, you've obviously noticed that fertility is an issue. Did you believe it to be just in your little portion of the world, or did you think that was a global issue we were facing with cattle fertility?
Well, I didn't really think. Well, until I was able to get to see content from Jim Elizondo and also from Grant because I've used some of his genetics. I've used Callion, and I saw that what he was trying to address there was also the fertility issue of the Brahman breed. And I've also seen that some of the mainstream Brahman breeders um, have already realized that the genetics that they've been exporting to other countries, I believe, have been a bit subpar when it comes to fertility.
Yes, sir.
So little by little, I'm starting to realize that it's not just a problem here in the Philippines, but a global problem.
Okay. Well, I like to ask anybody, I'm a local boy. I'm from Texas. I've only been out of the United States one time, and that was to Mexico for a 2-day trip. And so I like to get a feel for everybody else's little taste of the world, their little slice. So, and a fun way to do that is through the viewpoint of cattle. So,
Oh yeah.
do you feel like the Filipino market for cattle is at par with the remainder of the world, or do you feel that they're blooming in a very unique way?
Um, I think if we're talking about beef here in the Philippines,
Yes, sir.
we're not yet very particular when it comes to choice cuts, premium cuts. For us here in the Philippines, it's more like beef is beef. So beef is beef, but there is a growing appreciation for premium cuts. But thing is, I think there are a lot of areas here in the Philippines that where food security is a problem. So I don't think we can afford to focus on selecting for premium beef. I think here it's more important for us to focus first on being able to feed our people, and to be able to feed them, I think it has to start with us being able to produce our products at a relatively low cost.
Yeah, and more frequently.
Yes, and more frequently.
It doesn't really matter if you have one cow that's 300 pounds heavier than the other if it's only producing one offspring every 3 years.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
You could lose 300 pounds a year if you still had one every year.
Yes, because farmers here don't have access to inputs that highly nutritious inputs. So I think adapted genetics are even more important for us here in the Philippines. But
I'd like to expand on that with a question for you, Mr. Bog.
yes,
Whenever these cattle do come into y'all systems and they don't calf at an expected rate, are y'all told that it's due to poor nutrition? I mean, that idea doesn't come about on its own. What led you to that statement? Have you been told that y'all are offering poor nutrition to these cattle, and that might be some of the reasons they're having issues calving?
oftentimes yes. Oftentimes management gets the blame, but yeah, I believe that management is still really the most important. But the thing is, I think if we focus more on improving the genetics, then only then will we realize what the difference that could make.
Well, we've noticed here in the United States that oftentimes the nutrition level is used as a scapegoat for the failure of the genetics.
Yeah, same thing.
That's why I had to ask in that manner.
Yeah.
And we're seeing a real awakening that people are finally starting to ask, especially here where grain is so readily available and you want your operation to be successful. So you fall victim to these traps of buying more grain and doing these and adding supplementation, and still the genetics fail. There's a lot of people that are finally starting to look at the cow rather than the feed bucket as being the issue.
I think you're right about that, because there were times here that we would give our cattle the best feed that we could find available, but still produce at a have a very low calving rate for the year.
Yeah.
So we were starting to think like that we were the problem, that we're probably not doing enough. But uh, yeah, partly we realized, yes, we are the problem, but that's because we didn't really know better. We didn't know that there were genetics that existed that would thrive on lower input systems like here in the Philippines.
Yeah. Well, for the listeners out there, I know my next statement is going to be redundant, but I don't know if you've ever heard me state it. The Boss Hires team we're pretty fed up of all these shortcomings being laid at the feet of the producer. We're tired of everybody always jumping through hoops and still being told that you're to blame, when the truth of it is the industry led us in the wrong direction. They told us that we just needed to feed a little more, we just needed to add a little more supplementation, that this big growth was a beneficial and it should lead to fertility, but you've let it down. And it sounds like y'all are catching on to that same thing. You've been told and treated the same way the average cattleman has, and everybody's finally waking up. We can't all be doing it wrong.
Oh yeah,
We
yeah.
might have all started in the wrong place.
Oh yeah, I believe that, because I think that that's the information that's been disseminated for the longest time. Even even institutions, like if you go to ag school here in the Philippines, like that's what they're going to tell you. They don't really talk to you about the adaptability of the animal. Like there's always that discrimination towards the native animals that we have here, because it's like they would say that, okay, this animal is more adapted, but it's too small. So I think that's the problem here also is that we've also been raising cattle for mostly for bragging rights. Like we never really thought of. We don't really. The most serious breeders here don't really get to focus on producing beef at a low cost because, of course, there's always that belief that bigger is better. That the bigger cow would give you better production, better return for your efforts.
We have the same false flag happening here. We have so many producers that are prideful that they can do less with more. Our herd is reduced by 20%, but we're still carrying and producing the same amount of beef. In my opinion, you're putting too much burden on the shoulders of few. I would rather have three cattle, rather than have three cattle meet my quota, share that across 10, because when it is a hard season, they can all lose a little and we still meet the quota.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right.
So that's where moderately famed cattle, I'm a fan of them for that very reason. And I feel that this, this definitely works against what's being taught at university. And I like your note there about your native cattle. They can't never leave it alone. There's always a but, isn't there?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But I think there really has to be a lot more effort to be able to promote these native cattle, the genetics that we've lost over the years. I think there is an effort on the part of the government, but the thing is, I think it requires some. I think more cattlemen that should be able to start raising these cattle again and be able to show to others that what can be done here in the Philippines.
Yes, sir. Well, and the importance of working with your native cattle, you could bring in some adapted genetics and work with them along with your already native cattle, and within one generation achieve local adaptation at a level that you could never among 5 generations of cattle imported. And you touched on food security earlier. How big of a role could your native cattle play in y'all's recovery of your food security?
Oh, I think it's going to be a win-win for the producer and for the consumer because we're with the low input cattle, we're going to be able to produce at a lower cost and produce calves every year. I think the producer will be able to realize that there is more profit to raising these moderate to small frame cattle, and because we're able to produce it at a low cost, we're also going to be able to profit even if beef is sold at a relatively lower cost.
Yes, sir. Well, I know that earlier when we were speaking on how you found your way into this line of thinking, you discussed materials that you encountered with Man, Cattle, and Veld,
Yes,
and a little bit of Jim Elizondo's material, and you even spoke on bearing witness to one of Grant's presentations with Boss Ayers and being a customer of Callion.
yes.
So I imagine that wake up for you of what cattle could be was far more gradual. Do you feel like the remainder of your country is going to struggle? Is this something that can be picked up on quick and rewarded, or is this going to be a long fight?
Um, I think it's going to be a long fight, but it's gonna be a
I appreciate your honesty, sir.
it's gonna be a long fight. But the thing is, I'm more optimistic about the future because I get to talk to more people who have the same mindset now. Some of the people that apply these practices are a bit older now, and the next generation, I think they're more focused on be. I think most of these practitioners are like. I would say that they're already kind of like my at the same age as my grandfather. So and the thing is the generation between us is more focused on show type genetics.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm the only crazy one here or
Well, I can promise you're not crazy.
but I think over time we'll be able to hopefully convince more people to get into this movement and realize that there's a better way to raise cattle.
Yes, sir. Well, I have to ask, just because we're so excited to be a part of this movement that you're speaking on, how did you feel after discovering Boss Sires? You said you felt crazy, and I was about to tell you half the people we deal with felt like they were crazy until they met us and realized that we have a whole room full of crazy to talk with.
Well, the thing is, I've been following Callion for a long time. So the thing is, when I saw Grant post about Boss Sires, and I thought originally that he was only focused on Brahmans, but this is like it got me excited when I first saw the Boss Sires catalog because I was thinking, oh, finally now I could bring in with this options that Boss Sires is giving me. I'll be able to bring in genetics, Mashona genetics that I thought were totally inaccessible for our part of the world.
That's wonderful. What do you feel like that means to your operation to finally have the opportunity to get your hands on those genetics?
Well, that's something that we're gonna find out because later on, because of course, I've heard so many good things about the Mashona. I've heard the Mashona thriving in low input environments in Africa and also in the United States, but um, we've never been able to bring in those genetics here in the Philippines. But that's something that we're gonna have to discover in the long run.
Okay. Well, along those lines, we like to carry a message of hope with all of our podcasts. What are your hopes for the Filipino beef market? What new innovations do you hope come about?
New innovations. Well, the thing is, we've a lot of people in the industry have been focused on improving the mechanization of farming here in the Philippines. So
Ugh.
there's a lot of improvement when it comes to the machines that we have compared to years ago. But I think we really still have a long way to go. I think a lot of cattlemen here haven't been informed about the principles of regenerative ranching, and I think that's another thing. The problem that we have also here is that we also don't have lands as vast as places like the United States and Australia. So
Absolutely.
so here in the Philippines, it's like normally one farmer would take care of just a few heads of cattle. So I don't know if I think this has to start on ranching level because here in the if you have 200 heads, 300 heads of cattle here in the Philippines, you're already a big operation because of the land that we have available. But
Well, Mr. Boggs, don't feel like you're a world apart. 85% of American cattle owners are considered hobby level, and that means you own under 40 head.
oh, I didn't know that. I thought that most operations there were like the thousands or
No, sir. The 85% of the cattle market in the United States is considered hobby level. They're enjoying the benefits of the tax breaks they get behind raising cattle. So there isn't a whole lot of pressure to produce at profit, and that's been another negative side effect in the genetics here within the United States. When you have cattlemen that don't raise for profit, what kind of cattle are you raising?
oh, okay, all right. I didn't know that. I thought it was like
Yeah.
I
So
thought
y'all aren't alone in that as well.
yeah.
There's a whole lot of a little is a lot.
So yeah, I'd like to be more hopeful about the industry here, but of course, I think since a lot of little by little there are more members of our the Federation of Cattle Raisers Association of the Philippines that are being exposed to this type of knowledge. I think over time, little by little, we'll be able to influence some newcomers to the industry.
Okay. Well, Mr. Boggs, you brought up the concept of bigger is better in their eyes.
Yeah, that's right.
Could you tell me whose eyes those are and why that principle may have come about?
Well, I guess it's all good marketing because I think for me it's not like in the case of like you would say a child like it's easy to just tell to say that bigger is better, right?
Yeah, it rolls off the tongue well.
Yeah, like if you're like you're going to simplify things, like anything that you get to see as bigger is easier to grasp as better. It's not like when I was introduced to genetics, like I didn't really understand that how smaller frame cattle can be more efficient. It just didn't make sense at first.
Yeah, it would take a little bit of a more in-depth conversation, and that wouldn't come through well in a pamphlet. What does come through, and what's easily rewarded is it bigger than the last one? Good, keep going. Is it bigger than the last one? Good, keep going.
Yeah, yeah.
You're right. That is a easier marketing strategy.
It's just so easy, so much easier to market that uh okay, they're bigger, so they must be better. So it's very simple to it's more simple to grasp for the average cattleman.
Yeah,
And I think producing more moderate frame cattle requires experience. Like you have to be able to experience it firsthand to be able to appreciate.
absolutely.
Because when I first transitioned to smaller frame cattle, like to tell you honestly, the first time that these calves dropped, I wasn't very impressed. Like what did I get myself into? Like why are these cattle smaller? Like there's that feeling that initially that, oh, I probably made a mistake here.
Yeah. Well, that's one way that conversations like this are beneficial. It's one thing for me to
Yeah.
tell someone to trust me and take a risk. It's another to hear someone in your own backyard that found their way to this knowledge on their own, like you did, and took the risk and have reaped the rewards. I mean,
Yeah.
you've done nothing but enjoy the benefits of these more moderately framed cattle, their ease of care, and not to write a love letter about your cattle that I've never laid eyes on. I'd rather give you the opportunity. Tell me why you love your cattle.
Well, the thing is, when I focused more on these genetics, I realized that with the more adapted genetics and selecting more moderate frame cattle, it's easier for me to keep them in a good body condition, even on lower inputs.
Yes, sir.
And aside from that, I've been having less problems of dystocia, having to pull the calf that I used to have when I was using genetics coming from large cattle. And what I also found out is that they also mature earlier. Like here, I was telling you earlier that we're able to have cows calf at 3 years old and 4 years old. I don't think that's acceptable there in the United States. Here, I know it's probably a bit late, but since we have relatively probably low nutrition inputs, um, I've had some cows that were able to breed at 18 months.
That's great.
Yeah, by improving these genetics for one generation.
Yeah, yeah, it's not exactly that you have low nutrition. It's you had cattle that couldn't utilize the nutrition in a good way.
Yeah, that's I guess you're right. You're right about that. Well, there's a lot because we don't really have access to these genetics yet that much here in the Philippines. There's a lot for me to discover.
Yeah. Well, it's an exciting moment in cattle rearing for the Philippines. All these new concepts coming about, and people like yourself diving in and exploring the other options. I think that's why we're so excited to speak to you. Is you found your own way to our truth and the principles that a lot of our producers live by.
Yes.
What you're celebrating in your cattle is a reality that was created by being hard on them. You know,
Yeah.
the only way you get to having moderately framed cows that you don't pull the calf on is if that was never allowed in your system and those genetics were never allowed to move forward. And the
Oh
only,
yes. Yes.
and you're realizing that yourself and you're rewarding that to the next generation as well.
Yes. I mean, that's a very fulfilling thought that you'll be able to pass on genetics that will continue to improve as the generations go by.
Yes, sir. Well, Mr. Boggs, I know you've listened to a couple other podcasts I've done, so you're probably aware I like to ask all my guests a question.
Yes.
In your opinion, what is the moral obligation of the cattleman to the land, the cattle, and future generations?
Uh, well, the thing is, I'm basing this on the what I've learned through my journey, that we have to realize that uh, it's really the how, uh, more than the cow.
The how more than the cow. I like that.
Yeah, yeah. It's not the cow. It's more of the how, because they're just part of they're just part of nature, part of the system that we have here. So we have to find ways to be able to consider them our companions in working with nature to continuously improve our land and hopefully make a positive impact on the environment.
I like that. I think you might have found the title for your episode with that statement right there. It's the how more than the cow.
Yeah.
I like that. Well, Mr. Boggs, we've spoken a lot about the systems these cattle come from and what is rewarded. But I've spoken with a lot of other guests about the assumptions within the industry. But I want the listener to understand that it's very easy to fall victim to the assumption that for something to have made its way to me across the other side of the world in a catalog, this is the best of the best. So I'm going to assume that it can perform its job. I can assume its fertility. I can assume this, this, and this. And the problem with those assumptions is you'll be let down more often than not. Would you find that
Yeah.
statement to be true?
I think it's true, because I think we here we've failed to ask the question, like, okay, these cattle are look good, they're well marketed, but the thing is, are these the genetics best for the Philippines? I think we failed to ask that question. But the thing is, I think what really helped their marketing was that, they were able to get together, and I think it's all good English. Like, if you get to see that, this cow is the best in the world, like world champion. This cow comes from a line of champions. In terms of what then? Like,
Yes.
yeah, are these actually are these actually the traits that will give us the best?
Was he a champion grazer? Was he a champion sire? Or did he just walk around a sawdust floor the best?
Yeah, will it be the best for our system? I don't think we were able to ask that question. Like, all we know is that we're selecting cattle that look good aesthetically.
Okay, my next question, Mr. Boggs. Do you think enough producers within the Philippines know to ask these questions of the market? Do you feel like you're in a unique position to know to question that?
I don't think so, because a lot of people who have the means to sustain a ranch normally don't really consider that to be their main business here in the Philippines. There's always another business that subsidizes that, so they're not really very particular with whether or not their operational is profitable, because they have other businesses thriving.
Well, I told you earlier that there is a lot of commonality that you didn't recognize earlier between the American marketplace for cattle and the Philippines.
Yeah.
I don't think we're as different as we assumed we were. I think we both have failures within our systems. We both have successes, and we both have great hope for what direction the industry can go if we learn to work with the cattle and with nature.
Yeah, for us here, it's like, I think it's no different from breeding animals as pets here.
Hey, that feels a little targeted with my miniature cattle farm. Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's the truth, because we're really more focused on how the cow would look, and we're more focused on producing for size, and I think the way that we judge these cattle are the same way that we would judge a show winner dog, or
Yeah.
a show winner animal in general.
We've forgotten the purpose of what a cow does. It takes grass and makes it beef, and it
Yes.
feeds a country, and it makes a calf. if we showed along those lines, it would be a far more difficult show, but it would be considerably more rewarding.
Yes, it is. And if we thought about it more, that we're breeding to feed the country, then I think that the industry would be in a better place, and there would be less a need for us to rely on importing beef from other countries.
Yes, sir. Well, I think you know just as well as I, when I'm eating a good piece of beef, I don't really care what color the hide was on it.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Well, sir, I've got to ask, do you feel like there's anything else you'd like to add before we wrap this up? Do you feel you have any remarks for anybody there in the Philippines that might be listening? A message of hope, inspiration, or direction?
Oftentimes I get to think about that after we have the conversation. Like, I should have said something like this, like that. like, but I don't know. I really just hope that gradually Filipino cattlemen will realize that, they could play an important role in food security, in being able to feed the hungrier portion of our population here. We're about like 100 million, more than 110 million, I think, right now already, which is quite a lot for a small country. And much of our population is hungry. So I think it's high time for us to focus on producing beef at low cost, because I believe if we apply the principles of regenerative agriculture, we'll be able to make our land more productive, the producer more profitable, and we'll be able to feed more people.
Yes, sir. Well said. Well, I also have to add, so you just spoke to the Filipino producer with that statement, but we are heard in 46 countries at this point.
Yes.
So if you had a word of encouragement for American producers, Australian producers, what would it be?
Word of encouragement. Well, I wouldn't really say word of encouragement, but I'm just going to ask them to bring. I'm just going to ask them to bring the genetics that would be best suited for the Philippines. That's I think that's all that I'm going to ask.
I like that. No, that was good enough, sir. I appreciate that.
Yes.
Well, Mr. Boggs, I wanted to thank you for your honesty and letting us in on what your vision for what the cattle industry can be there in the Philippines. And I feel like conversations like this are a way that we're going to move forward and create those environments that are beneficial to both the cattle, the land, and the people of our countries. It's the only way forward. I feel we could all be profitable and fed and have the security we need. Yeah. And if I can continue to speak to more people like you, I'll be a happy man.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Patrick.
All right, guys. Well, to the listeners, thank y'all for tuning in for this episode. I'll have all of Mr. Boggs' relevant links in the podcast description, as always. But y'all remember to ranch with purpose.
Breed for the future.
Thank you for tuning in to Sustainable Stock, Reviving Legacy Genetics. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share. Join us next time as we continue exploring the legacy and future of cattle ranching. For more information, visit us at bosssires.com. That's BOSSIRES.com. Or connect with us on Facebook. Until then, stay rooted in common sense and connected to the herd.